Yapalingata. Rob and Thomas coming here to you from the land of the Pakana here in Lutruwita, and we're going to be talking today on the Voice to Parliament. How you going, Thomas?
Good, thank you. How are you, Cuz?
Yeah, not bad, buddy.
As most people know, myself and especially yourself are very outspoken in regards to our own thoughts. We don't toe the line of anyone, and we definitely are not puppets, that's for sure. So we're
Definitely.
Very community-based, family-based, and when we do need to, we speak on behalf of an organisation if we are going to stick it to them or stick up for them if they're in the right. That's how we are.
Yes. Yep. Me personally, I need to speak on behalf of myself and my immediate family. One whose house I'm sitting in here at the moment. But that's it. Nobody else. I do not represent, all the people here in Lutruwita. Just myself and immediate family. That's it. Now, the Voice to Parliament. How do you sit on that?
I'm not sold on the points that were put forward for a Voice to Parliament. Obviously, I'm going to be more for a treaty because there's just more chances of a gain for the community than there is with just having a voice. We'll go more into this, but my feeling is a voice can always be taken away. A treaty can be broken, but then there's processes in line that we can use legally to enforce our rights after
that. I agree. I think the Voice to Parliament idea is a good idea, but I think it's not the first step we need to be taking. The first step we need to be taking is a treaty, and that would include also truth-telling. Now, the reason this is all coming up anyway at the moment is because it's 30 years since the Mabo decision. Now, that means the last 30 years since that decision was taken, Australia really has no legal standing in the international community because they're a government on lands that are sovereignly owned by another people. They have no right to it. So the international community have given them 30 years of grace, and I think that's starting to run a bit thin now, and they start to say to them through back channels, guys, you have to do something about it because otherwise we can't legally deal with you. International relations is a very tricky thing. We can't do a deal with the United States over New Zealand territories because they don't own them. They don't administer them. That's the same with the Australian government at the moment. Legally, they do not have a leg to stand on. So we've been quite good at coming to them and basically saying, look, if you give us a treaty and come to some terms with us, we don't mind sharing the country because, let's face it, if we took the entire country back over, it would go to pieces in minutes because I don't know how to run an electricity station. I don't know how to get the infrastructure going or anything like that. So we're not going to be taking back the entire country. We don't want the entire country back. Christ knows what I'd do with half of Hobart. Live in a different house every night for, that'd be fine for a couple of weeks, but that'd be it. So, we've got to really look at doing or having a treaty and saying in the treaty, okay, the country will be governed by a government from Australia and a government from the Aboriginal communities. And that can be our Voice to Parliament. Very similar to what they have in New Zealand, where there are dedicated Maori seats. Except here in Australia, the Aboriginal seats we would have would be elected only by Aboriginal people. So they would be Aboriginal parliamentarians or parliamentarians in the Aboriginal House. That's the way I'd see it going. But at the moment, this idea of going straight to a Voice to Parliament, and it's a Voice to Parliament, it's not doing anything else, it's just giving advice. Now, we've had that before with Department of Aboriginal Affairs, the National Aboriginal Conference and so on. A few other different departments and organisations. And it's always been advice, never anything more. It could be policy and stuff like that, but it's up to the government then if they want to take it or if they want to water it down. What we need to do is have total say if on Aboriginal affairs and Aboriginal issues that are affecting us and us only, we should have the only say in what actually happens. Government of our own lands. And
I fully agree.
I'd envision it going. The Aboriginal Parliament would be in charge of everything to do with Aboriginal lands and Aboriginal life decisions, health and education and so on. which would also tie in with the rest of the Australian system, but also would have input into the Australian system as well, because let's face it, the entire country is ours, and we want to see it succeed too, because if it doesn't succeed, then it doesn't help us out as well. Because we're not going to have the tax base to be able to run a proper government, because the areas of land that we have aren't the areas of land that are the most productive. We won't be mining, we won't be having major cattle stations and stuff. Some of the areas, probably will have, but the majority of areas, no, it won't be. There'll be more tourism based and basically around caring for the land and conservation, really. Returning it to the way, having cool weather burns that, returning it to the way it should be, and it was 200 odd years ago. And that's going to take a long time, of course. So we need to have total control over those lands, total control over the decisions that happens on those lands, and total control over any decisions that affect Aboriginal people and policies.
Yep. No, that's it.
And that's all going to come in under a treaty. That'll all be written in under a treaty. It doesn't need to have a voice to Parliament, because it'll be written into the treaty. So the question that should be asked by referendum is, and it is one that should really only be asked of white people, should we have a referendum with the Aboriginal people of Australia? Yes or no? And that's the only question that needs to be asked. Then the idea of what goes into the treaty, we put forward a proposal. They say yes, no, whatever, to certain points. We sit down, negotiate, write up a document and a treaty that's going to suit us and is going to be suitable for the Australian government.
Yep.
So simple.
It is that simple. I guess
it's a matter of first off getting the Australian people to say, yes, we want this to go ahead, because if the Australian people say, no, we don't want to have a treaty with the Aboriginal people, fine, no treaty, we don't go forward like that. Instead, we organise amongst ourselves and we go to the World Court in The Hague and say, okay, we want to enact our full sovereignty over Australia, get rid of the Australian government, and we take over. That's the other choice. We are the legal owners of the country. Our sovereignty's never been ceded, so why shouldn't we be running the country?
Yep.
The legal government at the moment is illegally doing it. They have no claim to the land, no legal claim, and that is a problem with the international community.
It's true. One of the things that often gets brought up, I've had discussions with Michael Mansell about this. Obviously, there's a lot of differences in communities. Obviously, not referring to ours in general, because as big as the differences are here, they're quite minor compared to some of the others in the mainland. But the differences overall are that a lot of communities just don't see working with other people at all. And these are things that have been brought up to me quite a bit. At one point there, I used to get messages left, right and centre, and I don't know why they would ask me, but they were like, oh, you've got to tell Michael this, you've got to tell Michael that. And I'm like, what am I going to tell Michael? I was like, you contact him.
You're the one that's trying to make the point, not me. And it's not my point. I'm not going to put my heart into it like you are. So, true. But trying to get the Aboriginal community to all agree on something is impossible. It's like trying to get the white community to all agree on something. It just doesn't happen. That's why we have elections and majority rule. So, there will be families and groups of right way across Australia who will be slighted by any decision, but they will have to be with it and coming with it as well. Now, we could be one of them. We could say, no, this decision, or the way the treaty's been written, is very centric. So it might be focusing on the Alice Springs Northern Territory area of Australia as far as full treaty rights go, and bugger all down here.
Yep.
But if it's passed, we have to live with it, and then we have to actively campaign and have that treaty changed, or those points changed at some stage. Because treaties, like everything else, will be like the Constitution. From time to time, it will need to be changed. Now, our Constitution hasn't changed very much since it was first written. And now we've got a constitutional crisis through the actions of Scott Morrison, and it's going to need some tweaking. So same thing is going to need to happen with treaties. And it's not going to be one treaty fit all, because they will necessarily need to come into a one federal treaty, but the state treaties as well will be going in as well. The states already, Victoria and Queensland have already got treaties. Down here in Tasmania, you've got the treaty process going on. Elsewhere, it's happening as well. Now, states are actually sort of a step ahead of the federal government like that, in that they're actually making sure that they've got a legal base. The federal government may still end up finding itself without a legal base.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to mention there. Do you think there's more chance of just separate state-based treaties than there is of having anything federal? Because a lot of people obviously see more of a chance for them state-wise, and they really do rip down the idea of a federal one, where I've seen a lot of better-known people in the media, including Michael for that matter, that see a better chance at a direct federal treaty. And he still obviously wants a state one, and he's looked at that and thought about that. But he looked at the seventh state idea, which we won't go into because we'll be here forever. But you know, he looked at a lot of that option, and obviously wrote a book about it. So yeah, it's interesting. The way things are in other states. I mean, I can look at Victoria and see what's going on there, and sort of see the attitude of a few people there, and see how that's probably going to go. I mean, it's looking great at the moment from the outside, but I don't know that it's quite as clear cut as the media sometimes makes it look, including the group that is pushing for it, the First Peoples Assembly group. They're obviously making it look like it's all going nice and crystal clear. But if you speak to the general communities out there, you know, I have Bunurong Heritage. I've spoke with some of them. You speak with Yorta Yorta Mob and some others, and they're nowhere near as sold on this idea as some others. And it's, yeah. And obviously in Tasmania, I mean, we'd be here forever talking about the differences here. One of the main reasons that we were going to do a podcast was because of the differences here. And, you know, our views on the last 20 or 25 years with organisations coming out of nowhere, what's going to happen if we do have a treaty. And obviously now we're really starting to find out what could happen.
Exactly. And, you know, in different states, not Queensland, for example, they would have to have different treaties. There'd have to be one for the southeast corner. There'd have to be a separate one then for up Cape York, and then the Cook-Yalanji and so on. And then Western Queensland would need one, and Central Western Queensland. It would have to be like a multi-area document. Same with Western Australia, and same with the Northern Territories. You know, Central Australia and the top end are two totally different areas and have different needs. So the treaty would, on a state level or a territory level, would have to be something to be worked out on those levels and to encompass the different areas and be able to figure it out.
How do you think that would work in Tasmania?
We're still at that division of area, and that even though the size of Tasmania is not that big, but it's one of those things that we'd probably have to look at and discuss, you know, as a community. And when I say as a community, that means as an Aboriginal community. That means, you know, some of these organisations that we are very iffy about, and we know have not got Aboriginal members, and maybe only one or two Aboriginal people in the entire membership. Those people are going to have to be allowed in to have a say as well, because under Tasmanian state law, which is what their treaty will be, they are classified as Aboriginal until we can get that changed. This self-identification bullshit, because it doesn't work and it can't work. Because as we've got people claiming Aboriginality that aren't Aboriginal, and it's just not on. I mean, Christ, we've got one of them in fucking federal parliament.
Yes, exactly. Don't even get me started there. That's another conversation. I guess in the long run, you're right. We need to include all of the community and all of the people that are listed by the state as Aboriginal in one way or another need to be included in the conversation, because I don't know that we're going to be able to establish anything without including them. When it comes down to obviously proof of identity, that's going to be a whole nother matter that will come as part of the treaty. Self-identification down here is an issue, as you've implied and mentioned. And it is something that's going to have to be mentioned, yeah.
Because if we don't, like in the last 4 years or 5 years or something, we've tripled in numbers. Now, that's not possible. I mean, even on at my youngest and my best days, I couldn't have done. And I tried. But, we could not have tripled numbers, and there was never 3 times as many Aboriginal people here in the state as what there was. There's only a couple of different families. There's only 3 or 4 people that our people mob have descended from, and we know them all. We're related to them,
yep.
And we know who our relatives are. And yes, we know there's been a few stolen generations and stuff through the gap, but they're still coming back. We have one come back in our family here only recently, or 2 in the last decade, counting my daughter. But yeah, it happens. But we know about them anyway, and there's always 1 or 2 people in the family that have records of them and know about them, or can have proof. But these other people just come out with vague responses about, oh no, someone told my grandmother that this person was that person, and they live next door and was probably jumping the fence and stuff. No, it's got to be something better than that.
These the ones that really get to me are the deathbed confessions, and
Yes.
It's hard because they throw it at you and you can dispute it, but it's used, I think, in a way to sort of try and prevent that dispute, and it's not fair.
It's like an argument, like a final say there. The person said that you can't, question, can't answer back. So where do you go? There is nowhere to go. Yeah, it's something we have to really look at, and will have to be part of any treaty that's written down here, and be everywhere else throughout Australia. But then there's going to need to be a covering treaty from the feds over the top of that. Otherwise, it's just a collection of states. So there will have to be a federal treaty over the top of that, which will literally tie them all together. And that's all that needs to do.
True. Obviously, we're going to end this fairly. It's been a brief first podcast, but we did say these were going to be just discussions amongst us, unless we were going to include other people, or we were going to be very in-depth on the topic. There may be topics where we will go further in the future, but I think that is it for today. Thanks for joining me, Rob, and I'm glad that we're going to start doing these conversations, probably not weekly, but as often as we possibly can.
Yep. And of course, any questions or ideas people have got, they can always contact us through Facebook or Twitter, and just ask a question there, and we can put it forward into our next topic.
Very true. All right.
Well, look, people ask voice to Parliament. We've done it.
All right, buddy. I stuffed that up a bit. I cut in there. Yeah, I guess, the options there for people to send us questions, as you've said. We're happy to go into topics, even if we don't, focus on them ourselves generally. We can look them up. We can go into detail. We can have other people join. We've done this one on Zoom. We may end up doing a later one on Teams. We're looking into better ways to do it. If we do it that way, we will also be able to include other people. And the options are there. There may be topics that we want to go into where we'll have to include other people, because we don't want to just incriminate ourselves.
Exactly, yeah. And besides, the more voices, the better it is. More opinions means more information.
That's the best way to put it.
Yep, you can never have much information.
That's it. All right, Woolika, enjoy your day, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Look at Thomas.